Disclaimer, sometimes in this video I call dislight dissolute. I have absolutely no explanation for this, I'm sorry. Genshin Impact is receiving backlash after leaked characters show a lack of skin tone and body type diversity. The fictional world of Teyvat zones are based on real-life countries. Mondstadt is based on Germany and other northern European countries, Liyue on China, and Inazuma on Japan. Upcoming zones have also had their real-world influences speculated on: Chechnya, Russia, Natlan, pre-Columbian/Indigenous America, with aspects of Spanish and West African cultures, Fontaine, France, and Sumeru, medieval Middle East and South Asia. Sumeru is to be the next zone. What's the problem with this? Number 1, zones inspired by locations that have large populations of dark-skinned people are mushed together with more than one culture, Natlan and Sumeru, whereas zones inspired by locations that have large populations of light-skinned people are allowed to have their own dedicated zones. Number 2, leaked Natlan and Sumeru characters are so far light-skinned: Sino, Tignari, Koli, and Dori, and I do not know if I'm pronouncing any of those correctly. Iron-san is tan, but look at the colour palette from the other current characters. She isn't exactly dark-skinned. I have a couple of disclaimers before I get into this video. Number 1, I still find it hard to judge an incomplete game, no matter how sure I and others are that changes won't be made. Number 2, I have a massive disdain for people who are currently describing the characters in Genshin Impact as all white. They're all pale, but they're not all white. We have to bear in mind that white is a race of people that is associated with the Europeans. Large chunks of characters from Liyue and Inazuma are the equivalent of Chinese and Japanese people in Teyvat, cultures that are vastly different than Europe, and I don't like the idea of conflating pale-skinned people with white people because it just confuses cultures and sort of whitewashes them. And lastly, I am thankful for the separation of Liyue and Inazuma, or China and Japan, because so many Chinese and Japanese things are conflated, or Chinese things are assumed to be Japanese. I sometimes get called a weeaboo for participating in things of my own Chinese culture. This once came up when I told somebody that I was looking at getting a hanfu. They told me that's Japanese and cultural appropriation. Hanfus are Chinese, and kimonos are based on hanfus. Though it is a bit confusing, Yoimiya's existence in Inazuma doesn't really make sense because of her fireworks, which were invented in China, but hey ho, whatever. Fans are frustrated by Hoyoverse's lack of diversity, whether it be for representation or character design reasons. While I love the designs, I also have to admit it's becoming lazy with a lack of skin tone and body type variation. Dislight, another Shanghai-based game, has way more diversity in both regards. I want to talk about China's history when relating to colorism and how China today may allow these archaic beliefs to fester. My primary source is this article by Robin Lofton posted on Black Past. I'll post a link to it in the description if you would like to read it in full. Some scholars believe contact between Africa and China began as early as the 4th century, but documented evidence doesn't appear until the Tang Dynasty, the 7th century, 618 AD to 907 AD. This was in the form of recorded trade. Around this time, Arab traders brought African shaves to China, 10 centuries before the transatlantic shave trade of the Euro-Americans. I will have to be substituting certain words in this video that YouTube doesn't like. This is when a cultural perception of dark-skinned people first developed in China. They referred to the shaves as Kunlun, thought to be ignorant, scary, and dangerous, although sometimes they were portrayed as heroic. Kunlun Nu, or the Kunlun Shave, is a wuxia romance written by Pei Xing. The story revolves around a Kunlun Shave who uses his amazing physical abilities to save his master's lover from a court official's harem. During the Song Dynasty, the 10th century to the 13th century, 960 to 1279, numbers of shaves increased. Attitudes towards them ranged from mysterious to frightening. Many dark-skinned shaves now came from Madagascar and the Comoros Islands. However, free Africans were perceived as respectful and regarded with honor. For example, East African merchant Jiang Jiani was honoured as one of the first African foreign merchants to be received by Emperor Shenzong, giving him the title Lord Guardian of Prosperity, lavishing him with gifts on another occasion. During the Yuan dynasty, 13th century, 1271 to 1368, contact between Africa expanded via trade and diplomatic missions, and there was an extensive trade by the time of the Ming dynasty, 14th century, 1368 to 1644. Between the 19th and 20th centuries, commodities such as herbs, spices, and precious goods became important for trade between certain countries in Africa and China. The Box of Rebellion became the first significant African-American contact in modern China. Troops from the 10th Cavalry were sent to suppress the Boxers and free foreign hostages and Chinese Christians. Between World War I and World War II, African-American jazz musicians rose in popularity in Shanghai and other Chinese cities. However, on the 1st of October 1949, China became a communist nation. Much like the Soviet Union and other communist nations, China recruited Africans to study in its universities in a bid to gain support among the emerging generation of Third World political leaders. These numbers at first were small, but by the 1960s there were enough African students in China to lead to racial tensions and protests. Much of this tension was rooted in the Chinese government's decision to provide large scholarships to Africans from China-friendly nations. If you are unaware, many Chinese beliefs and traditions come from Confucianism, which was an ideology fronted by, well, Confucius. While his philosophy was thought to be suppressed during the Qin dynasty in favor of the legalists, they blossomed during the Tang and Song dynasties. Confucianism laid out certain principles and ways in which people should live in order to have a purposeful life. Some of these principles still have impact on today's China. For example, filial piety, which is devotion and duty towards one's family, and the one that's relevant here, an importance in education, that people should strive to be well educated and achieve the best possible, which is probably where the idea of the Asian F comes from. The notion that anything below an A or an A+ is an automatic failure. Chinese students may have felt slighted in the fact that foreigners were coming over with full scholarships, whereas they were still struggling to achieve their best with what they had. Between the late 50s and the early 1970s, interracial dating between African men and Chinese women added to the tension. Now, this is pretty common if you've been around in circles of pretty much any Asian family. You're expected to marry somebody not only of the same race, but of the same nationality. So many of my Korean friends have been told to bring home a nice Korean boy. Specifically Korean, not just Asian, Korean. It's the same for me. When Chinese acquaintances realize I have a little slice of that Chinese in me, they'll tell me about their lovely Chinese son who has a nice apartment in Shanghai and earns a decent amount of money. In 1979, the first physical confrontation occurred between African and Chinese students in Shanghai. More clashes followed, prompting some African students to return home voluntarily or be deported. The single largest clash came on December 24, 1988, at Hoyoverse University in Nanjing, when two African male students arrived at a party with two Chinese women. When security guards stopped the group, claiming that the Chinese women were adult workers, a brawl ensued which left 13 students injured. When a false rumor that one of the Chinese students in the melee had been yeeted, over 300 Chinese students attacked the dormitories housing the African students. Despite the tensions, Africans and increasingly African Americans have been growing in presence in the country since 1990. Most Africans are concentrated in the port city of Guangzhou. In 2014, an estimated 16,000 Africans lived in the city of 11 million people, the fourth largest city in China. Racial tensions haven't dissipated, however. We can see recently in the global problem that we had in certain Chinese stores, Africans or those of dark skin were not allowed to enter Chinese stores out of the belief that they would be infected. Why is China, a developed country, still acting in such archaic ways? And one explanation I have is the availability of information. The fundamental problem is the way that information is distributed within China. Information can bring about a difference and variation of opinions, but Chinese media is so regulated that it's hard to have those variations, and I am by no means saying that the Chinese public is brainwashed and completely compliant. Like I've said before, oppressive governments breed sneaky people. There is the added problem of censorship. If you voice any opinion that diverts from what the government wants you to think, you can be punished for it. So it's both a problem of the freedom of information and the freedom to express opinion. There has to be a complete reform within Chinese government. Ergo, destroy the CCP, destroy the CCP. Okay, but why would a game like Dissolute have so much more variation to a game like Genshin Impact when they're both based in the same city in the same country? And that is again because of the inconsistency of information. It may be a case that the creators of Dissolute are more travelled or have access to other information that the creators of Genshin Impact do not have. Again, it's to do with the accessibility of information. And therefore we could interpret that information as we see fit, which is why there's so many variants in opinions when it comes to democratic countries in comparison to communist countries with a dictator. We are permitted to debate as well. We're allowed to debate and discuss differing opinions, whereas a country like China, that is not allowed. They get what they're given. Other viewpoints and facts just simply cannot be brought up, and even if a person in China does have a differing opinion, they may not be able to voice it. The added fact that the more popular a thing is, the more eyes from the government it's gonna have. Dissolute has made $14 million US. In comparison, in 2021 alone, Genshin Impact made $1 billion US. There's going to be a lot more eyes on them. While they may be succeeding monetarily when it comes to creative freedom, they're going to suffer. And a far more shallow problem may be target demographic. Dissolute may well be targeting more Western-based players, whereas Genshin Impact may be tailoring their content towards Chinese players. It also has a lot to do with beauty standards. Even before East Asians such as Chinese people met white people like Europeans, being pale was a beauty standard. This is likely to do with pale skin being an indicator of higher status. If you were of a lower class, you would likely have to do hard labor mostly outside, which would give you a tan, whereas if you had pale skin, it indicated that you did not need to do back-breaking labor and ergo were of a higher standing. It's the same reason why you may see some courtesans in harems having those long fingernail attachments. These are fingernail guards and indicated that they did not need to dirty their hands with hard labor. This is basically the controversy explained, the historical and beauty standards behind it, and why solving the problem isn't just about a singular game, but an entire societal construct that needs to be demolished with fire. I hope this video was mildly entertaining and informative, and I hope that in the future we can become a lot more progressive within China. I really hope so. Please just burn the CCP with fire. Anyway guys, I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye.